Hello and welcome to my guide about Zeraora. Today you will learn everything you need to play Zeraora yourself in ranked. I personally have a lot of success with him, and I reached master with a win rate of 72% with him, and I think I'm currently the best Zeraora player in Europe at the moment. Except of course I don't know anyone who is better. So I think what I'm saying here should be relatively fine information, or at least to a certain extent should be somewhat reliable, at least I would say. So let's start right ahead. First of all, for choosing a lane, Zeraora should not lane in top or bot lane because he's a speedster, and speedsters usually profit from high burst and very good mobility. And Zeraora's power is exactly that. He's very good at roaming and bursting, but that is not what you want to have in lane. That's what you want to do to roam around the map, get man advantage and get good ganks off and stuff. Zeraora is good at ganking and bursting, and in lane you don't really get to do that. Also, Zeraora is very level reliant, so and in jungle you get a lot more XP than in lane. So if you play him on lane, you will be underleveled compared to what you usually would be, and it makes him quite bad there. So I would really not advise him to play outside of the jungle. You can either play him as a normal jungler in solo queue, or you can play him as a hyper carry. Hyper carry meaning you can play him with a support who funnels you gold and XP so that you get over leveled. This he can also take over this role, but mainly he's a normal jungle archetype champion. So let's go over his items quick. Personally, I take attack rate, float stone, and scope lens because I do believe that in most games attack rate will be better than muscle band. And the difference between attack rate and muscle band is attack rate gives you more AD if you score like once or so, and muscle band gives you less AD but you get the AD instant and you get attack speed. But I don't believe that attack speed is that powerful on Zeraora because you already get attack speed with your passive on your spells. And attack speed has a diminishing returns in value, meaning if you have already bought attack speed, it's better to get more AD than getting more attack speed. If you hit hard, you want to hit more, but if you hit a lot, dealing more damage with each hit does more than having more attacks, because it's percentage and not flat. So that's important to understand, that if you have already attack speed in your kit, that AD becomes more valuable and more attack speed becomes less valuable. So I would rather take attack rate over muscle band. Also, he's an assassin ganker, so typically he gets to score if he is winning the game. So I would go for that one. Float stone I take because it makes your movement speed faster if you're not in combat, meaning you are faster around the map, you're faster to get to your ganks, you just save a lot of time by moving, and time efficiency results in tempo advantage, and jungling is all about tempo. You want to get every second you can, and float stone is really good for that, so I would always take float stone. And last but not least I take scope lens because this I think has higher damage than, for example, muscle band, but I am not 100% sure because there are not reliable numbers from Pokemon Unite stats, so I cannot really compare it with another. I just believe it's highest damage, but I could be wrong on that. So basically what items you should have in mind at least would be float stone, scope length, attack rate. Other options would, for example, be muscle band or energy amplifier. But I'm not 100% sure like if what the best combination is. I can just say that I take attack rate, float stone, and scope length. So if you have like a better combination, you can write it in the comments. But I do believe that this is like a very solid and powerful thing. So let's talk about our summoner spell, or our battle item rather. Since we are jungler or hyper carry, we farm a lot of camps, and I would take Fluffy Tail. Most of you would say, but why do you take Fluffy Tail? Everyone is taking eject button, isn't that better? But I would say no, because if we look how we play and how our spells are, and basically everything we do, like how we do damage, how we play in fights, like how we get into those fights in the situations before that. Typically, eject button doesn't really achieve a lot, especially if you look in damage patterns and combos. There you will see that eject button is doing nothing to change that combo. And Fluffy Tail is similar to Float Stone. It gives you a lot of tempo, and it reduces the time to clear camps. You will get more XP in less time, meaning you get to higher power spikes. And with Fluffy Tail, you will be at a higher level at certain thresholds, which will be important. Because of Fluffy Tail, you can get to a power spike in an important fight, which you otherwise could not guaranteedly do. So it's really, really good. And it has a lot of high road, especially. So I really like it. I think eject button is wasted and bad. Like the only alternative I really see is full heal or goal getter, but I think goal getter is very speculative and most of the times doesn't really achieve anything. Like one in like 10 or 20 games, it might win you a game which you otherwise would lose, but I don't think it's reliable enough. Full heal is a good summoner spell, very underrated, because there's so many support and CC champions going around. But I do believe that the power of Fluffy Tail is more valuable than the CC immunity you will get in a certain fight. Okay, moving. Also, potion I don't think is good on Zeraora, because in the way how your damage and fighting patterns look, it's not necessarily completely bad, but I don't think it has a lot of upsides. So moving on to spells and what you should take. The passive of Zeraora gives increased damage to every third out attack you do, and it paralyzes the opponent and gives you lifesteal and boosted attack damage, which scales with 80. His passive is if he gets damaged, he will deal more damage, essentially. And at level 1 you can choose between slash and agility. You will get both on level 3. So level 2. But basically you dash to slash dashes to an opponent. It's a targeted ability, it's not a skill shot. So you need to have a target to use, and you will deal damage to them and knocking them up if the entire duration goes through. Agility is a dash which gives you attack speed. Then at level 6 you can upgrade your agility for 2 different spells. You can either choose Volt Switch or Spark. Volt Switch is a little bit like LeBlanc's W Distortion from League of Legends. You dash to a certain location, and if people were in your dash, which you dash through, they will get paralyzed, and you get increased attack speed. You are also able to reuse this ability for a certain amount of time to get back to your old location, meaning you can jump to to a position, deal damage, and jump back. This is a very, very powerful ability, and I take it every game because it gives you a lot of playmaking potential. It gives you a lot of EHP. EHP meaning effective HP. Basically, if you jump into the opponent and you trade until you're at 1 HP, you can always go out. So you essentially, if you wouldn't be able to go out, you would die. So there would be many situations in which you cannot jump in because you die. But with this ability, you can jump into the opponents and get damage, and then jump out, and then regen your health very short, and then go back in with the next volt switch, which has 8 seconds cooldown. So this is a very powerful bread and butter ability, which will be later on also pretty apparent why it's good. The alternative would be Spark. This leaps at an opponent, shocking it. And you can use this up to 3 times. Also, while you are airborne, you can jump to the closest opponent instead. And you get like lifesteal when it's upgraded. I personally don't really like that ability, and I think you should always go for Wind Switch. Because Spark doesn't allow you to go out, Spark is only to engage into opponents. It might deal more damage, but you will lose a lot of effective HP, and this effective HP you can use to do your combos again, which we talk about later. So at level 8 you have the option between 2 different spells. You can go for Discharge or Wild Charge. Discharge basically gives an AoE field around you, which deals damage to your opponents, shielding you. And if for example they are paralyzed by your dash ability, for example, they will be pulled towards you and they get stunned. And they get extra damage as well. So this is really, really powerful. If you jump into an opponent and use your Discharge, you can deal so much damage while also getting a shield, dealing so much damage, and then you can even jump out again without losing much damage. If you go over combos, this will be very important and will be the main ability, and it's really, really broken. That's the only thing making Zeraora playable, basically. The alternative would be Wild Charge. Basically, you have it like a dash, which is a skill shot, and if in the dash you get to hit target, you will do a Master Yi Alpha Strike, basically. You lose a bit of your HP and you will become untargetable, but deal damage to the opponent. This will be extend the duration of the time where you're invulnerable while damaging the opponent. Will be longer if you dash, for example, through him and give him the paralyze. And then we get to his ultimate, Plasma Gale, which I always take. Basically, you have a targeted ability again, which deals damage to all opponents in the area and displacing them. And while you are in this zone, you get increased attack damage and attack speed, making this a very strong keyboard ability. And one of the best ultimates in the game. Okay, now let's talk about our main strat. What we want to do, 2 minutes 7, and our power spikes. Basically, our main power spikes come at level 8 and level 10. At level 8, we get Discharge, which is very, very broken ability and our main damage source. And at level 10, we get our ultimate. And these power spikes are really important to know, because if you reach these power spikes, this will be the most powerful state of your champ relative to different champs which you can get, and you should try to play around these. Also at 7 minutes, so 3 minutes after the game start, Dreadnought appears. And Dreadnought is the main objective everyone is fighting about, because it gives you the most upside and power, and who gets it gets a lot of XP XP and the shield. So the one who wins the Dreadnought fight will also win the fight, win the Dreadnought and the fight at the same time, in most cases. So it's a really powerful objective, which everyone is fighting for. And everyone's goal is to be as strong as possible at this Dreadnought fight relative to the position. So for you that means, if possible, you want to be one of your main power spikes, and if you're not able to get to your main power spikes, you want to go to a alternative power spike. You want to be as powerful as you can. And with Fluffy Tail, if you play correctly, you are always able to reach at least level 8 to get your discharge at minute 7. So you always are able to have this very important discharge ability. Also when you are ahead, so you are very, very strong and can snowball quite heavily because you are a speedster, and speedsters are very good at snowballing. So if you reach level 8, when other champions are like level 6, you can do a lot in fights and solo carry them. It's really crucial that you get at least level 8 at this fight. So you should do everything possible to reach this. And in some games, when you have like the better team and you get like an early game lead, sometimes you are able to reach level 10 at around the 7-minute mark, usually a few seconds later. If you are able to reach this insane power spike, this is very huge, and then you will always win the fight. There's no way that you ever lose if you reach level 10 as Zeraora at minute 7. So you aim to get at least level 8, but if it's possible, and basically there will be like a Dreadnought dance and you have like a few extra seconds so that you reach the last level, you might be able to hit level 10 at 700 to, not at 700, but basically at like 650 or something, or 645. And if you reach this, you can then solo carry the fight and win the game of that. You have to be careful though, because you can only reach the level 10 power spike if you have a very good early game, near to no downtime, and you need your team to be able to stall out a few seconds, that you just get this little extra time to just reach that very powerful power spike. Sometimes you will reach level 9 before that, and you are able with one kill or by slaying the Dreadnought to get level 10 and win the fight afterwards. This is another win condition for the fight, which you can also keep in mind if you are just not in reach for level 10, but very close to. But this sometimes will be a possibility. So our main threat is basically to power farm as much as possible to till the 7 minutes to reach the highest possible level. The main things are that we full clear our jungle, and that we then try to fight for Vespi Queens if possible, maybe even tax 1 or 2 camps of our laners after the Vespi Queen time a little bit earlier. For example, when one lane is like hard fighting instead of doing their camps, then we can come at like 9 minutes and then take like 1-2 camps with the team to get some XP stolen, which you should not always do, but you can sometimes do if you have like supports and stuff, which don't really have a power spike at 7 minutes. Without that, then you can go for Vespi Queens, and then it's really important that in the middle spawn the crabs. And those crabs are really important. You want to try to get as many of them as possible. If the opponent is good and also is contesting them, you most of the times will not be able to reach level 10, except you get like hypered. But other than that, like if you only get 2 crabs, you only get like level 8 or level 9. But if you are able to get all of the 4 crabs, you might be in a position to reach level 10 of it. And while clearing crabs, it's important that you keep in mind that you don't take the movement speed plans while going through them. You usually want to take the grabs of one side and the movement speed planned afterwards, unless you think that the opponent will be able to contest the movement speed planned. Then you take the first grab, and then you use the movement speed plan to get to the second grab. Then you take your side grabs, and then you use the last movement speed plan to get to the gank or to the path back to your jungle camps with the movement speed plan, so that you use as much of the movement speed plan as possible. And you want to use your volt switch over the wall to get some extra seconds in time to clear the grab. And you always want to take Ludicolo first because of the clear speed buff you get. And you want to use Fluffy Tail if possible on buffs rather than crabs, but sometimes you use them on crabs if you get more Fluffy Tails off. If you have to really min-max a lot and be very fast in what you're doing to reach this level 10, which you sometimes are able to if you win the river and the Respik wins. Let's talk about combos. First of all, we have two different early game gank combos. The first one is the gank, the standard gank with follow-up potential. Basically, we try to gank the opponent with a slash or by auto-attacking him and using slash as follow-up, or using slash instantly depending on the situations. Typically, if they fight, you want to slash instantly because you get multiple AoE knock-up into the opponent and win the fight. And you use agility if they flash away from you. With flash I mean eject button. That's the main combo. Sometimes when you see an angle and you want to get that slash into the opponents as soon as possible to return a fight, now that you get the kills anyway, for example, or need to be there instantly, you can start with agility into slash to have a higher range gank to get to that gank faster. But if you do that, you have less follow-up. So basically by doing agility first, you have less follow-up but a faster gank. But by doing slash first, you have less range but better follow-up. So that would be both options. Using agility first and then attacking and using slash's follow-up. In some very rare cases this can be doable, but typically you start with slash off. Next off we have bursting combos and how we play teamfights. Basically we play around our cooldowns. So basically discharge has 12 seconds cooldown and volt switch 8. So if we usually what we can do is we can use the volt switch to engage into the opponent team, using discharge and dealing damage. And then when the opponents are not stunned anymore, or when we feel like we have to go out, we use volt switch again to get out of the situation. And then we wait and play safe until we get our next volt switch discharge combo. So often we only jump into the opponent team, burst them down a bit, and then jump out again and just stay there without damaging the position. This happens mainly when you have no way of executing the enemy team and just want to go for a ship. This has to be done precisely though, because if you fail it and get like this seed, then you might die because you can't get out of the opponent team. And sometimes you don't want to use volt switch the second part of it if you're able to kill the opponents or win the team fight while being in the opponent team, for example. But this is one of the most important combos, but you basically jump in to burst and then jump out again shortly afterwards. It's really important to play with your discharge and volt switch cooldowns. It's really, really important. That's the main combo you have. Sometimes when you run away, for example, you can use volt switch, jump into one direction, and then basically force the opponent to either chase you, and if he chases you, you can use at the last second volt switch again to be back at your old location. But if he doesn't chase you, you can just get away without using volt switch again. That's another thing you have to keep in mind. So sometimes you want to use volt switch not in your escape path, but in a secondary escape path, so that the opponent has to choose like what path he wants to block. This for example happens when you want to score a goal, the overextended, and then you can either run to the left or to the jungle, that you basically wall switch into the jungle, so that he chases you into the jungle, so that you can get back over lane. And if he just doesn't chase you in the jungle, you get out basically. And now we fast go over his weaknesses. Basically, as we saw, Zeraora is an assassin speedster, and he's very reliant on his spells and his power spikes. So if Zeraora doesn't get to his power spikes in the fights, he has a problem, because his power relative to different characters would be relatively low. So if you can stop him from getting discharged at the Dreadnought fight, this would be very, very huge. And if Zeraora loses the Dreadnought, he usually will be in a very dire position, because he's a speedster, and speedster need to be ahead if they want to be very useful. So this would make the life of Zeraora very hard. Also, it's really hard for him to reach a backline if you have a good front line. And Zeraora is very good at like AoEing. So if you have like a distance in between characters, it's really hard for Zeraora to burst down everyone. And he's also very reliant on his cooldowns. So if you're able to play, so if he fails like a volt switch combo and has to go back out, he is essentially useless and very kiteable until he has his cooldowns again. So using windows based on his cooldowns is very crucial and can result in a lot of pain for him. Also, Zeraora is very kiteable because he has no follow-up except for Volt Switch in the later game. Unless he's already close enough that his discharge can pull the opponent back in. So if the opponent is not marked and he has no Volt Switch, champions like Cinderace can kite him really, really good. So that's kind of a problem with him. So he's very reliant on his cooldowns, and if they get abused, then he has quite a bit of a rough time. But if he doesn't get stopped, he can snowball very hard and be very, very powerful. Now we will look over a game, how I clear and how I play the early game. So first of all, I straight go to this little Lillipop, because no need to steal XP of my laners, because then they don't get their level breakpoints and this would be terrible. I start with Slash, because it does more damage than agility, and I insta level up my agility, and I use Slash into Fluffy Tail, because in the charge time of the Slash, Fluffy Tail will be able to proc, and I get all the damage off. Yeah, basically I start off with Ludicolo, then I do the both crabs, and then I jump over the wall to attack this guy, to get the red buff on champions as late as possible and the clear buff as soon as possible, so that my gank is better and that I can use Fluffy Tail on the red buff again. Usually I gank the lane, which looks more gankable and where I get more resources. I have like a very good game basically, where I'm able to reach level 10. Basically a snowball. Here I clear the Vespi Queens because they give a lot of XP. I use Fluffy Tail on this guy because I get more value than on the Vespi Queens with it. Then I jump to the opponent crabs because it's more risky for me to take them. Then I see the opponent jungler taking those. Then I chase him a bit to scam off. And then I get low life and I see he gets back up, but I just jump out over the wall and I keep clearing. Here I see that my teammate is stealing my jungle camp, which which is kinda sad because this reduces the XP I will get. But I'm still pretty far up with XP. So now I have like 1 minute left to get to level 10. Here I decide not to recall and to go as much as possible for XP, because I believe I can hit level 10 in time. So here I wait for the response of the camps to get the XP, because I have no jungle camps up and the crabs just respawn very soon. So I take these, look if I can contest this, see that I can't. Basically rest them a bit down, that I can get the Vespi Queens. Yeah, I wait for my cooldowns before I go back in. And now I'm able to burst them down, get the crab. And here I decide to back off because I need to go to the bottom dread now and can't rest so much time. But I still need half a level. So I take the camps in the meantime, because the opponent is not starting it. I should pan my camera over to look how much it has. And here he stole a little bit of my XP and I run back into Lucario and got random chip on me for no reason. But here I'm able to hit level 10. And here's another example where I only reach level 8. So here I did the same clear again. And here I had to topside because I have Crawdent, and Crawdent is really good early game 1. And the opponent were only level 3. So it was pretty easy to get here to be able to contest this. I even got a kill because the opponent was misplaying. And in this downtime I took the HP because it only took a little bit of time, because I had a little bit of downtime. So here I get those. I over chase instead of going for jungle camps, which was a mistake, and here I die. So because of that I most likely will not be able to reach level 10 in most of the cases. But I still need to get level 8. So I look if there's a gank possible. I don't see a guaranteed kill, so I keep farming. But I always keep my camera if I get like a free kill. Here I take like one of the sides because these crabs I need to take now, because otherwise they might be taken by someone else. And here I go for these crabs because I see that I have top lane priority and I always escape path topside. I look top if there's a gank, I don't see like a kill here, so I keep farming. I use movement speed plant in the end. Do as possible, jump over the wall, all min-maxing. I take this one last because of the champion buff basically. Here I look top lane because there's a fight and I want to get the push out so that my top laners can recall or go directly bot side. Also I get like a free kill in the score here, I think. Do I even get a score here? I'm not sure. But here, this game I'm only level 8, shortly before level 9, without level 10 at right now. Here I'm quite sad that my teammates didn't went for the bot side. Yeah, I miss pinged. But still I reached my level 8 power spike at the Dreadnought fight, so it's really important. Because as you can see, my damage is really high. And there's like not a lot that the opponent can do, because I'm overleveled. And here I kite back because I have cooldown. I get back, so I kill everyone and get the Dreadnought, basically winning the game. Also I get level 10 again because of this, so there's no way that I ever lose a fight. But I hold my ultimate as long as possible.